I call the Honourable Taylor Martin.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. And of course, I rise to support the Port of Newcastle Extinguishment and Liability Bill 2022, and I do so enthusiastically after government amendments were passed in the other place, which now provide a framework for the Port of Newcastle to apply to extinguish its liability under the Port of Newcastle commitment deed after it pays the state compensation. Now, the Port of Newcastle, as was mentioned earlier, is the largest coal export terminal in the world. It's the backbone of the Hunter economy, and a container terminal there would help to diversify its operations into the future. Now, diversifying the port is key not only to the long-term future of the port itself, but diversifying plays into the larger strategy for the wider Hunter region as we grow a larger economic pie into the future for the region and secure a brighter future for the Hunter in New South Wales. It is particularly important to note in this debate that when that initial transaction took place, it cemented Port Botany as the destination for the importation of finished goods into New South Wales. Now, this made perfect sense, as 90% of imported containers are destined to stay within 60 kilometres of Port Botany. However, exporting agricultural goods out through Newcastle makes perfect sense, and at the moment, much of our state's produce is forced to be transported to Brisbane, adding time and cost in exporting perishable food and fibre. So the ability to use the Port of Newcastle with its superior rail links throughout rural and regional northern New South Wales in particular would be a big win for the producers throughout New South Wales. And furthermore, for the many skilled manufacturers across the Hunter, this is a win, and I am sure that in the future we'll see those innovative businesses making use of any future import-export capacity there at the port. In 2014, the New South Wales Government and the operator of the Port of Newcastle entered into a long-term lease of the Port of Newcastle. As part of this transaction, the parties also negotiated and entered into the Port of Newcastle Port Commitment Deed. Under this document, the Port of Newcastle is contractually liable to reimburse the state when certain conditions are met. The transaction at the time was the right one. It gave the freight industry certainty and has led to massive investment across our state. These investments are on the record, so I won't go into them in detail. I've outlined them in this place before, and they also formed a part of the inquiry by the Public Works Committee in the previous term of the Parliament. It also provided gross proceeds to the state of $1.75 billion. Now, this funding has delivered many benefits to the Hunter region in particular and to New South Wales. It provided funding to the Restart New South Wales Fund and was also invested into the Revitalising Newcastle program, which has, of course, had great success. Funding from that transaction allowed the light rail line in Newcastle to be built. A hugely successful project that has ignited so much private investment into the city by removing the long-term physical divider of the city of Newcastle. The light rail is a high-capacity, frequent and reliable service throughout the city centre, connecting key activity precincts and opening up great urban renewable opportunities as we're seeing. The $650 million Revitalising Newcastle program was a direct result of the port transaction. The change in the Newcastle CBD over the last 8 years has been absolutely profound. Right along the light rail corridor, places that were formerly blocked from public access are now vibrant and open to all. New public spaces such as the station, Museum Park, Market Street Lawn are sustainable and being used by locals each and every day. Affordable housing has been built through the corridor for people on low to moderate incomes such as retail workers, childcare and youth workers. Another fund, the $450 million Hunter Infrastructure and Investment Fund, was created, which then built and upgraded new facilities at our hospitals, expanded the Newcastle Airport Terminal, upgraded roads, schools and upgraded parks throughout the region and built new sporting facilities. None of this would have happened without that transaction 8 years ago. We simply would not have had the money to do so much of what we had done. The Port of Newcastle Port Commitment Deed was a direct result of the New South Wales Port Policy, which was first released in 2012 and reinforced in the New South Wales Freight and Ports Plan 2018 to 2023. I note the Shadow Treasurer in his speech earlier said that there isn't a ports plan. There is, and it's now at least 4 years old, and Minister Farraway's office, I'm sure, will be more than happy to get the Shadow Treasurer a copy if he needs one. Now, that plan recognised investments in and around Port Botany over the past 2 decades. It recognised those investments had been coordinated through a consistent and bipartisan approach by successive state governments and federal governments. That should continue. Any good government will continue to monitor conditions and review evidence And that is exactly what the Perrottet Tool New South Wales Government is doing by supporting this bill. When circumstances change, a good government will be nimble and adapt to those changes, and that is one of many reasons why we are supporting this bill. Mr. Deputy President, I want to finally acknowledge the member for Lake Macquarie, Greg Piper, for bringing this bill to the Parliament, for engaging with the government in such a reasonable and constructive way, of which we wouldn't expect anything less from him, of course. But I also acknowledge the many, many stakeholders who have engaged with myself, other government members, through a very, very long period of time, back and forth on this issue. It is my belief that this bill will enable this issue to ultimately be settled once and for all. I commend the bill to the House.